You probably have a very simple picture of death in your head, even if you've never said it out loud. 1 second you're here, thinking, feeling, remembering. The next second, the lights go out. Black, nothing, no thoughts, no dreams, no time passing. Just a hard wall of off. The way a movie ends when the screen goes dark and everyone leaves the theater. That's how most people imagine it. Death as absolute nothingness. But here's the strange thing. The closer you get to the actual physics of reality, the less sense that picture makes. Not because physics secretly proves some religious afterlife, and not because Richard Feynman was secretly a spiritual guru. He wasn't. He was allergic to nonsense. But when you look at how matter, energy, space, time, and information really behave, nothingness turns out to be a word we use for something we don't actually understand. And the universe is nowhere near as off as your mental picture suggests. So let's do something bold. For the next little while, put your usual story about death on the table, not to destroy your beliefs, but to test them with the same ruthless honesty Feynman used on every problem he ever touched. You think death is nothingness? Feynman's physics hints at something else, not a sentimental fairy tale, not a guaranteed heaven, but a much stranger and maybe more comforting reality than a simple lights out. Before we dive into the heavy parts, let's set one boundary clearly, because Feynman would insist on it. Physics cannot tell you there is a personal afterlife where your favorite memories play forever. It cannot show you a soul weighing 21 grams leaving the body. Physics is about measurable things, particles, fields, energy, information. If someone tells you science has proved heaven, they are abusing both words. But that doesn't mean physics has nothing to say about death. It just means what it says sounds different from religious pamphlets and also different from the childish black nothing in your head. Start with a simple question Feynman loved in different forms. What do you actually mean by nothing? When you say, after I die there's nothing, what picture are you using? A blank black screen? An empty void? Silence? The deeper physics goes, the more those pictures fall apart. Take empty space. For a long time, people thought of a vacuum as true nothing. Remove all the air, all the particles, and you're left with nothing at all. But quantum field theory, the language of modern physics, says not so fast. Even the emptiest space is not truly empty. It's a restless stage where fields fluctuate, virtual particles appear and disappear, and energy is never exactly zero. What we call nothing is often just something we aren't paying attention to. This is the first hint. If you think of death as falling into a pure, hard, absolute nothing, you're already using a concept the universe doesn't really offer anywhere else. There is no room in physics where literally nothing is going on. Not in the vacuum, not inside atoms, not between galaxies. There are quiet places, low-energy places, but not places of absolute zero existence. So it's worth asking, why are you so confident that your death will be the one magical event where the universe finally manages to produce true nothingness? Now, let's turn the camera around and look at you, not just space. Right now you are not a vague idea. You are a very specific pattern of atoms and electrical activity. You might think of yourself as one thing, a single person. Physics sees something different. Trillions of atoms arranged in an insanely precise structure, bathed in a dance of electrical and chemical signals we call your nervous system. Those atoms are not domestic pets that have always belonged to you. There have been other things. The carbon in your body was forged in ancient stars. The iron in your blood was cooked in stellar explosions. The calcium in your bones lived in rocks. Long before you, those atoms were busy being everything else. Feynman loved this idea, the notion that you are a way for the universe to look at itself. When you die, those atoms do not vanish. They do not fall into some absolute black hole of non-existence. They move on. They get recycled by bacteria, plants, animals, the air, the soil. The specific pattern we call your body stops maintaining itself. The arrangement falls apart, but the ingredients continue in the grand flow of matter and energy. The universe never says, "Okay, these atoms are done, delete them." It just changes how they are arranged. You might say, "Fine, but that's just my body. I don't care if my carbon shows up in a tree. What about me? My awareness? My memories? My sense that I am me?" That's where things feel like they go to zero. But even here, physics quietly undermines the idea of clean nothingness. Your awareness is not a ghost floating in your skull. It is a process running on physical hardware, a process that depends on structure and energy flow. When the structure breaks and the energy stops, that process cannot keep running. So far, that sounds like off. But think like Feynman for a second. When something turns off in physics, what does that actually mean? Imagine a radio that is playing music. You walk over and turn it off. The sound stops. Did the music disappear from the universe? Not exactly. The radio stopped converting radio waves into sound because you cut the power. The station might still be broadcasting. The information that created that pattern of vibrations still exists somewhere else, in recordings, in the minds of people who remember the song, in the designs of instruments that can replay it. The pattern is not nothing. It's just not happening on that particular device at that moment. Your brain is not a radio picking up a soul signal from outside, but the analogy shows something important. When a process stops in one place, its traces remain elsewhere. Your particular stream of consciousness might end when the brain can no longer support it, but the information that made you who you are does not completely vanish without a trace. Pieces of it are encoded in other people's brains who knew you. It is stored in things you've written, in the effects of your actions on the world, in the subtle changes you caused that ripple outward. From a strict physics perspective, information is not something you can just erase with a snap. There is a deep principle related to how quantum mechanics and thermodynamics work that says information is conserved in a very fundamental way. In practice, it gets scrambled. It disperses. It becomes impossible to reconstruct the original neat pattern. But it doesn't turn into nothing. Throw a book into a fire, and you have destroyed the readable words, but not the information in the cosmic sense. It's smeared into smoke, heat, light, altered chemicals. The universe keeps an extremely messy record. Feynman wouldn't jump from this to, "Therefore you are immortal." That would be a huge leap beyond the data. But he would absolutely say, "Be very careful with words like nothing and gone forever." In physics, we almost never truly delete. We transform, we disperse, we change form. Death seen this way is not an event where reality drops to zero. It is an event where one highly organized pattern of matter and information stops maintaining itself and releases its ingredients and traces back into the wider universe. Right now, if this is making sense, pause and check in with your own emotional picture. Does this idea that nothingness isn't really a thing in physics feel more comforting or more disturbing? If it's waking something up in you, this is exactly the kind of channel you'll want to stick with. So take a second, if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, tap like so this kind of deep dive actually reaches more people instead of getting buried under shallow content, and drop a comment telling me how you used to imagine death and whether this shifted that picture even a little. That small action is how you tell the algorithm, "Hey, more of this, less mindless scrolling." Let's keep going, because there's another layer where Feynman's way of thinking changes the story of death, the idea of identity. You feel like a solid I. A single thing continues day after day. But look closely, you are not made of the same atoms you had 10 years ago. Your body constantly swaps out matter, eating, breathing, shedding, rebuilding. Your brain's connections change, memories strengthen and fade. And yet somehow, through all that, you feel like the same person. From a physics and neuroscience point of view, you are less like a statue and more like a whirlpool in a river. The water molecules are always different, but there is a recognizable pattern that persists for a while. If the flow stops, the whirlpool disappears. Did it go somewhere? Not really. The conditions that made it possible changed. The pattern is gone, but the water is still there. Death, in this metaphor, is not the whirlpool going into an empty box labeled nothing. It's the flow of conditions changing so that this particular whirlpool no longer exists. The river keeps moving. The energy keeps moving. The atoms keep moving. Other whirlpools will form. The fact that your pattern once existed is part of the state of the river now, even if it's not visible anymore. This is what Feynman-style physics does to big, heavy words like nothing and gone. It replaces them with pictures of processes, flows, transformations. The universe stops being a stage where things appear and disappear out of true nothingness and becomes a continuous dance where structure rises and falls, but the ingredients and the rules remain. Some people hear this and feel disappointed. So, you're just saying I get recycled and remembered. That's it? They want a promise of waking up somewhere else with the same stream of consciousness. Physics cannot give you that promise, but it can give you something perhaps more honest and strangely more powerful. The knowledge that you are already part of something continuous that does not fall into nothing. That your fear of an absolute void might be a mental illusion, not a physical reality. Feynman himself faced death with this kind of honesty. When he was dying of cancer, he reportedly said, "I'd hate to die twice, it's so boring." That's not a man begging for a guarantee. That's someone so used to living in reality, with all its uncertainty, that even death becomes another fact to observe. He didn't pretend physics had shown him a personal afterlife. He also didn't collapse into poetic despair about nothingness. He had spent his entire life discovering that the universe is far stranger and richer than any simple story, and that seemed to be enough. So, what does all this mean for you, right now, while you're still very much alive, listening to this, maybe worried about your own death or the loss of someone you love? First, it means your intuition about nothingness is probably not a reliable guide. The universe is not built out of neat on/off switches. It is built out of continuities, transformations, flows of energy and information. The end of your conscious experience is not the same thing as the universe changing a number from 1 to 0 and wiping you from existence. It's the universe ending one pattern and letting its ingredients and effects live on in other forms. Second, it means that what you do while you are alive matters in a very real, physical sense, because the traces you leave are not nothing. The way you treat people around you becomes literally part of their brain's wiring. Your choices push matter and energy in one direction instead of another. Your kindness or cruelty, your creativity or laziness, your curiosity or apathy, all write themselves into the ongoing state of the world. Death doesn't erase that, it seals it. It says, this is what this pattern did during its brief time as a whirlpool. Third, it suggests a different way to relate to your own fear. Instead of trying to solve death by inventing a guarantee you cannot check, you can let physics push you toward a deeper respect for the present. You are a pattern of stardust and fields that for a ridiculously short time has gained the ability to ask questions, to feel love, to understand equations, to watch sunsets and listen to music. Whether or not anything happens in a personal sense after you die, that fact alone is astonishing. It is so unlikely, so delicate, that it makes ordinary days look like miracles we are too numb to notice. Look around your room for a second. Every object you see is made of atoms that will outlive you. Every person you love is a similar pattern to you, temporary but real. Seeing death through Feynman's physics doesn't make you invincible, it makes you aware. Aware of how short the window is and how rich the underlying reality is. Aware that nothingness is not the right word for what is coming. Change is. Transformation is. The return of your borrowed atoms and your scattered information to the wider universe is. If you've stayed with me this far, you're already different from most people who click on videos about death. You didn't just want comfort. You wanted clarity. You wanted a story that doesn't insult your intelligence. That's exactly the kind of mind Feynman would have enjoyed talking to. So if you haven't yet, this is your moment to support more content like this. Subscribe, hit the like button, share this with one person who you know thinks deeply and might need to hear that death is not as simple as on, off, nothing. And tell me in the comments, does this physics-based view make you more afraid, less afraid, or just more curious? In the end, what Feynman's physics really hints at is not a secret heaven hidden in equations. It hints at a universe where nothing is ever truly static, where nothingness is more like a rope trick your mind does when it doesn't see the pattern behind the curtain. It hints at a reality where you, right now, are part of a chain that began in ancient stars and will continue long after you, whether you are here to notice it or not. It hints that death is not a sharp jump into absolute absence, but a change in how and where you exist in the only thing that ever really is, the universe itself. You think death is nothingness. Feynman's physics doesn't replace that picture with a neat, comforting cartoon. It replaces it with something messier and more honest, a view of you as a temporary, beautiful arrangement in a restless, never-empty universe. That might not answer every fear, but it gives you one solid, scientifically grounded thing to stand on. You are not a candle being blown out into a perfect vacuum. You are a wave collapsing into other waves, a chapter closing while the book continues to be written in countless other hands. What you do with that understanding is up to you. You can ignore it and go back to scrolling, or you can let it change, even slightly, how seriously you take your own life and the lives around you. And if you want to keep exploring these hard questions without fake certainty, you know what to do. Stick around, stay curious, and keep asking for the truth, even when it refuses to be simple.